Hi there, this is Tony from Pianotone.ca, and this is going to be a shootout video between some cool arranger keyboards from Casio and Roland. The Casiotone CT-S500 and the Roland GO Keys 3 and GO Keys 5. This is going to be an interesting comparison because there's some pretty significant discrepancies in both prices and features, so depending on what's important to you, hopefully this video is going to help you make an informed buying decision. Now you might notice that this is not a CT-S500, this is a CT-S1000V. I was able to rent this keyboard from my local music store because there was one sitting there available. There were no CT-S500s to rent. But that's totally fine because the CT-S1000V and the CT-S500 are identical, except the CT-S1000V has an extra vocal synthesis feature, which I'm going to be ignoring in this review. Now, while I will do some quick and basic demos and voice comparisons, I'm not going to be deep diving at all into any how-to details or demos, or this video is just going to be too long. Instead, I'm just going to focus on the features that you get or don't get versus the price for each of these models. If you want more detailed info or any deep dive how-to demonstrations, I have done full in-depth reviews on both the GO Keys and the CT-S500, which I'm going to link to in the description below. So with all that out of the way, let's check it out. Okay, so prices and some really important differences. The GO Keys 3 currently sells for about $360 US, and the CT-S500 currently sells for about $380 US, so those two are pretty close in price. The GO Keys 5 sells for a fair bit more, though, at about $500 US. So that might lead you to think that I should be comparing the CT-S500 to the GO Keys 3 only based on the price. Well, I could look at it that way, but not so fast. Now, as you will see during the course of this review, both of the GO Keys keyboards, so the 3 and the 5, each have quite a few features that the CT-S500 doesn't have. But there is one significant key feature and another less significant but still helpful feature that the CT-S500 shares with the GO Keys 5 only, but the GO Keys 3 is missing both of those features. So it's important that I talk about all of that first before getting too far into this review. So that is, the CT-S500 and the GO Keys 5 both have left and right 1/4-inch line-out ports for connecting to external audio equipment, and they both have a second pedal port. So what does this mean? Well, if you have any intentions now or in the future of using your keyboard to perform with, then you really should have a keyboard that has left and right line-outs for proper connections to amps, PAs, mixers, etc. And for a performer, a second pedal port is also really nice to have. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that even though you're going to see that the Roland GO Keys 3 does have a bigger overall feature set than the CT-S500 does for roughly the same price, if performing is something you plan on, then your comparison really should be with just the GO Keys 5 instead. And in that case, now you're looking at paying an extra $120 US for all the extra bells and whistles on both of the GO Keys keyboards in order to get those left and right line outputs on the GO Keys 5. Now, on the other hand, if you have zero intention of ever performing with your keyboard now or in the future, and as a result, you don't really care much about those left and right line out ports, then maybe you can compare the CT-S500 directly with the GO Keys 3 based on the similar prices and take advantage of those bells and whistles that I'm going to go over. So what are those bells and whistles that the GO Keys keyboards have that the CT-S500 doesn't? The first is the chord sequencer feature. This is a very cool feature, and it is available on both the GO Keys 3 and the GO Keys 5. I do plan on doing a full video on this soon, so stay tuned for that on my channel. But what the chord sequencer does is it allows you to input a detailed chord chart, including changes in style variations, and have the keyboard play that chord chart back to you using any of the built-in styles. This is an amazing feature. You can actually create your own backing tracks for songs by inputting a chord chart and then save that chord chart in a scene, which is a registration, along with the sounds and any other settings that you want, and then recall it and play along. This is kind of a game-changing feature for solo or duo performers that want to play along with backing tracks. There are 304 built-in chord patterns, which are great for practicing solos or comping, but these are just a single chord progression. The most powerful aspect of this feature, in my opinion, is the ability to input a complete song. And then there's one last big feature that the GO Keys 5 only has. The GO Keys 3 and the CT-S500 do not have this feature, and that is a mic input with gain and effects. This allows you to run a dynamic mic into the keyboard and add effects and even harmonies to your voice when you sing along. And that signal is going to get sent out of the lineouts to amps or PA systems, so that's a pretty cool feature. If you're a solo performer playing small gigs like cafes with a small portable PA speaker, running the mic through the keyboard first does save you a port on your amp, so this is pretty cool. Okay, so just to sum up the big differences that you got to keep in the back of your mind during this review. Prices, the Go Keys 3 is $360 US. The CT-S500 is about $380 US. The Go Keys 5 is a fair bit more at $500 US. Both the Roland Go Keys 3 and the Go Keys 5 have the chord sequencer feature. And the Roland Go Keys 3 has no left and right line out ports and only one pedal port, so it's not as good of a choice for performing as the CT-S500 or the Go Keys 5. Okay, so now I'm ready to dive into comparing the common features. Okay, key action. The key action on the Casiotone CT-S500 and both Roland Go Keys keyboards are really similar and both really good for the price. And to be honest, both, in my opinion, are much better than the competition from Yamaha. So to be honest, which one you prefer is going to come down to a personal choice, but they're both good choices and really similar. The keybeds on both of these keyboards are box-shaped piano-style synth action keys with a matte finish on top. What makes them both better than the competition from Yamaha is not only the piano-style box shape, but the stiffer resistance on these keybeds. Both the CT-S500 and Go Keys feel almost semi-weighted, so they each provide a much more piano-like playing experience. Now, there are a few subtle differences between the Casiotone and the Roland keybeds that might make you prefer one over the other. The first one is the octave width. The Go keyboards have true full-size keys, so 164mm octave width. The CT-S500 is a little bit narrower at about 161mm, so it's pretty close. And the Casiotone's is actually still wider than the usual narrower synth action keys that you're going to find on Yamaha PSR E-Series keyboards, which is 159mm. Now, I've talked about that in tons of videos. Some people care about this, some people don't. But I've got to say, as someone who does prefer full width, I don't notice this difference as much with the CT-S500 as I do with the Yamaha PSRs. The second difference is that the Go keybed offers just a tiny bit more resistance, and the other difference is that the CT-S500 has a deeper key travel. With all of that in mind, I should prefer the Go Keys action, but I actually don't. I do like both actions, but I actually prefer the CT-S500. It might be that extra key travel that I like, or a combination of that and the slightly lighter feel, but I just prefer playing the keys on the CT-S500. But either way, if you're looking for a piano-like playing experience, you're going to be happy with either of these keyboards. Okay, rhythms and accompaniment. Both the Rolands have 203 styles with 4 variations and optional short or long endings. The CT-S500 has 234 styles with only 2 variations of each, and there's only 1 intro or ending available. The CT-S500 also gives you the ability to add a fill without changing variations, which is a nice feature. Right off the bat, to be honest, for arranger features, the Go Keys 3 and 5, they both have quite a bit more going on than the CT-S500 does. Neither of the keyboards give you a huge amount of control over muting style parts. On the Go Keys 3 and 5, you have 3 parts you can enable or mute: drums, bass, and accompaniment. On the CT-S500, it's either accompaniment on or accompaniment off. So you just play with the drums or with everything. For chord fingering options, the CT-S500 isn't bad. It offers standard options, fingered on bass, and there's 1 full keyboard chord detection mode. The Go Keys outdoes that quite handily, though. There are a ton more options available to you, including multiple full keyboard detection modes, an intelligent mode, and instead of fingered on bass being a mode of its own, you can actually turn that feature on or off in combination with other chord fingering options, which is actually really cool. That way you can have the option of triggering slash chords by using chord inversions in various other chord fingering modes. Another cool arranger feature the Go Keys has over the CT-S500 is the ability to mute or hear what your left hand is playing. I've never seen this in an arranger before, especially at this price range. Usually in a standard mode, when you're fingering chords in your left hand to control the accompaniment, you don't hear the notes your left hand is playing. But you can turn that on or off if you want with the Go Keys. And you can also enable or disable auto fills when you switch variations on the Go Keys as well. So as I mentioned, as far as arranger features go, the Go Keys wins easily over the CT-S500. But there is one thing the CT-S500 has that, depending on your musical taste, might make it a better option for you than the Go Keys. And that is more traditional, more common, and more important than that, clearly named styles. I'm an older guy. I like playing classic rock, blues, and pop songs. And I personally much prefer the style selection on the CT-S500. For example, styles on the Go Keys like Sweetheart Rock, Sparkle Pop, or Cityscape Jam don't tell me anything about what the style is going to be like. Now, you do have some colorful names on the CT-S500 as well, but most of them still include hints like straight, shuffle, 8-beat, 16-beat, etc., which makes it much easier to find a style. And as far as the styles themselves, a lot of reviewers have praised the Go keys for having more contemporary styles. And while that's probably true and might be your preference, if you're like me and you're looking for a good selection of styles for classic rock, blues, or pop as opposed to modern songs or dance music, there aren't that many on the Go keys that I've found that aren't really poppy or really dancey sounding, at least to me. I was actually just looking for some basic rock beats for a song of mine, and I found precious few that would even work on the Go keys, and there were multiple options on the CT-S500. But Roland does have the potential to address that issue because you can download new styles from the Roland Cloud if you have a membership. I did take a quick look at styles that are available, and there are a couple of rock style packs that are free that I plan on looking at reasonably close in the future. Hopefully they'll give me more usable options, but that's going to be coming in a later video. So to sum up the rhythms and accompaniment features on these keyboards, the Go keys clearly wins this battle, but just be advised that the style selection might be a bit thin in comparison to the CT-S500 when it comes to good old-fashioned rock and blues. Okay, on to the sounds. The Roland Go keys have 1,154 sounds, and the CT-S500 has 800 sounds, so basically way more than you're ever likely to use or need. One big difference here, though, is that as with the styles, the Rolands allow you to purchase and download additional sounds off the Roland Cloud, but with 1,154 built in, I'm very unlikely to ever bother with that, but it is an option. Now, sounds are super personal. There are people who prefer Roland's pianos and electric pianos, people who prefer Casio or Yamaha. None of these opinions is right or wrong, it's just personal preference. To be frank, most of the sounds on these two keyboards are basically pretty good. Roland pianos do tend to be a bit warmer and have a bit more emphasis on the bass and the low end. Casio pianos tend to be a little bit brighter, leaning towards Yamaha a bit, which is much brighter. Personally, I've always preferred Yamaha pianos, so I also tend to prefer Casio over Roland, but again, it's totally personal preference. In the following demo, I'll try to include a handful of the most common sounds, as well as some splits and layers, so you can check these out. Okay, so what did you think? I have to admit, I think the main Roland piano does have more nuance and detail in it, while the Casiotone is maybe a bit more on the compressed side with less detail in highs and lows. And Roland's also has a bit more detail in the dynamic changes as you play. But as I've always said, sounds are 100% personal, and I personally just prefer the Casio main piano anyways. I'm a big fan of brighter sounds that cut through a band's mix well, and I think the Casiotone stage piano does a good job of that. As far as the rest of the sounds go, the electric pianos are good on both. The Rolands might have a little bit more detail in the dynamic change in the sample. So like on a Rhodes piano, for example, when you play harder, you get a little bit of a bark or a growl, and the Roland has more of that going on than the Casio does, so I kind of prefer the Roland's electric pianos just simply because of that. And for organs, they both have pretty good organ options for just sampled organ tones. So once again, all of that, it's personal preference, but overall, the sounds on both of these keyboards, especially for the price, are really good. Okay, so on to the effects. Now, I've never been the type who likes to spend a bunch of time tinkering with effects on my sounds. I just want to play. I usually just adjust the reverb a bit to my liking, and that's good enough. But I know I'm probably in the minority, and there's lots of you out there that do like to use effects to fine-tune your sounds. I don't think you have to worry. Each of these keyboards have a lot of DSP effects to choose from. The Go keys does have a bit of an advantage, though, because in addition to the DSP effects on the sounds, it also has a global effects section that's got 15 or so global effects, like phasers and flangers, etc. So the CT-S500's global effects are limited to reverb, chorus, and delay. But with all of that being said, if you're into tinkering with your sounds with effects, I'm sure you're going to be happy with either one of these keyboards, and I personally don't think that effects should affect your buying decision. Okay, the user interface. Let's move on to just a general comparison of the user interfaces, including a quick comparison of the registration memory system each keyboard offers. Now, I'm not going to be demoing these here, or it's going to make the video too long, so I'm just going to make some overall comments on my experience with each of these user interfaces. If you do want detailed demos on the user interfaces of either of these, just follow the links in the description to my in-depth reviews for each keyboard. So the user interfaces on the CT-S500 and the Go Keys 3 and 5 are actually a bit similar in their general workflow. Instead of having a ton of dedicated physical buttons on the front panel, they both use a context-sensitive on-demand screen where you have buttons below the screen that are going to perform whatever functions are indicated on your current screen. Now, this approach will always require the user to do a bit more menu diving to access features and change settings, but Roland did do a better job of making this easier on the user, while Casio might have taken this minimalist approach just a little bit too far. Roland did this in a couple of ways. Firstly, while both the Go keys and the CT-S500, in my opinion, would benefit from having more actual panel buttons to access common features, the Go keys includes just enough additional buttons to improve the user experience. The Go keys has direct access buttons for common functions like octave switching, transposing, and choosing voice categories, splitting and layering, and accessing the global effects. You have to dive into a menu on the CT-S500 to access any of those functions. And the other thing Roland did with the Go keys user interface that the CT-S500 is noticeably missing is list views for choosing voices or styles. Both keyboards have categories to narrow down your searches, but on the CT-S500, you can only navigate one voice or style at a time. You can't see a list, which is a bit of a disadvantage. Now, in fairness to Casio, they did include a couple of nice features on the CT-S500's user interface that do help the user experience that the Go keys does not have. One is that you can customize what buttons are displayed on one of the main menu screens to your liking. So if I owned a CT-S500, I'd be adding things like octave switching and transposing to that menu so that I could at least access those features a bit more quickly. And the other is that the CT-S500 has a very cool feature called My Setup. That's where you can save 4 overall keyboard environment setups and even have one of those loaded automatically at startup. That's super handy. Now, I do have one big criticism for both of these keyboards' user interfaces, and that is that neither one has direct access panel buttons for controlling the rhythms and accompaniment, so triggering variations, etc. I think both of these keyboards would benefit in a big way by adding those buttons to their front panels. So while my personal preference is the more direct access panel buttons, the better, because I'm not a fan of menu diving. Once you own and spend some time with either of these keyboards, you're going to get used to the interfaces and you'll be able to move around reasonably quickly. But my verdict on the user interface, the Roland Go keys definitely wins this category. Okay, so registration memory, which Roland calls scenes. Each keyboard has some distinct advantages over the other, and part of that has to do with the user interface. So that's why I'm talking about this here. The CT-S500 has 64 registration slots, but the Go Keys offers 256. And the Rolands allow you to name your scenes, which is a pretty big advantage. You can name them after a song in your set or something that you use for multiple songs, like piano pad layer, that type of thing. But the problem with the Roland is that it's not that easy to find these quickly, even though they are named. You basically have to scroll through that list of 256 scenes. With the Casiotone, while it's a bit annoying to me that you can't name your registrations, you can access them pretty quickly. There are 16 banks with 4 registration slots in each. So when you press the registration button, your current bank is going to be on screen, and then you can access each of the 4 slots in that bank with the context-sensitive buttons, or you can navigate quickly to the next bank. So if you needed multiple registration slots for a single song, you could actually organize them into the same bank and access them much quicker than I think you could on the Roland, where you're going to have to press the style button and then scroll to the one you want. So which of these systems works better for you is probably a personal preference. I think for me, if I was using the keyboard only at home, I would probably prefer the Roland system because I'm not in a panic to quickly load a registration. So I'd be fine using the named list. But if I was performing, I'd probably prefer the Casiotone so I can load them fast. I would just have to make sure that I had a bank and registration slot number indicated clearly on every chord chart that I was using in my Songbook Pro app while I was playing so that I know which one to load so I can find it quick. Okay, speakers. Neither of these keyboards have super powerful speakers. They're all basically just good enough for practice in a small room. Roland is all secretive about the wattage on these keyboards, which is kind of goofy, but probably tells you that it's low, which is definitely believable. If I had to guess, probably about 5 watts tops. The Go Keys 3 has a basic speaker system, and the Go Keys 5 adds a bass reflex system, which does add some nice low end, but they can distort a tiny bit on certain voices and styles at high volume, styles that have a lot of heavy bass in them. The Casiotone CT-S500 also has bass reflex speakers, and they're rated at 2.5 watts per side, so only 5 watts total. So also not really powerful enough for more than practice in a small room. But I have to say, Casio did a fabulous job with coaxing some pretty good sound out of these speakers. They sound quite a bit better to my ears than either of the Go Keys speakers do, and they also get quite a bit louder. I haven't heard any distortion from these speakers, even when they're at max volume. Here's a quick video of the Go Keys 5 and the CT-S500, both at full volume, just as picked up by the built-in microphone on my iPhone. So what did you think of the speakers? As I mentioned, none of these are loud enough for anything other than personal practice. I doubt that they would even be usable as monitors when connected to an amp for a performance unless it was a very quiet room. But the Casiotone speakers definitely outshine the speakers on the both Go Keys models in my opinion. Okay, so next on the topic list, built-in recording functionality. The Go Keys keyboards allow you to record an audio track that will include vocals if you're using a mic with the Go Keys 5, directly to a connected USB flash drive. And the Go Keys also has a built-in overdub feature where you can easily record a new audio track on top of a prior one, so that's kind of cool. You can also record MIDI on the Go Keys. Those get stored directly on the keyboard. You can play those back, but there's no editing or anything available, so there's not really any functionality there other than just capturing a quick idea. The CT-S500 doesn't have any audio recording functionality, but like the Go Keys, it allows you to make a quick MIDI recording to capture a quick idea. The CT-S500 also allows you to record and minimally edit up to 5 multi-track songs. Now, to be completely honest, I didn't have this CTS-1000V rented long enough to dive into the multi-track recording features. So in all fairness to Casio, I can't really offer a fair assessment of this functionality. That being said, though, to be honest, I would never actually use any built-in recording feature on any keyboard for anything other than just capturing a quick idea anyways, which both of these keyboards can do quite easily. For any actual recordings, I would always use a DAW app on a device like GarageBand on my iPad. Plain and simple, it's just way easier to do this kind of thing with a nice graphical user interface where it's easy to cut, copy, paste, drag and drop, etc., as opposed to trying to use a clunky user interface on a keyboard. So as a result, at least to me, the built-in recording functionality on these keyboards wouldn't affect my buying decision in any way. Okay, connectivity. I've actually talked about some of the big differences already, but I'm just going to sum up all the connectivity for all three of these keyboards. All three, the Go Keys 3, 5, and the CT-S500, have 1/8 inch stereo headphone out ports. The Go Keys 5 and the CT-S500 have 1/4 inch left and right line out ports for connecting to external audio equipment. The Go Keys 3 does not have those. The Go Keys 3 also does not have a 1/8 inch stereo auxiliary audio in port for streaming in external audio from a device into the keyboard. The Go Keys 5 and the CT-S500 both do have an auxiliary in port. All three keyboards have a USB to host port to transfer MIDI data from your keyboard to a device. But the Go Keys 3 and 5's USB to host port has a built-in USB audio interface, so it also transfers audio both directions. The Casiotone does not have that feature. It's a big feature that's been included on Yamaha keyboards for years. Roland has finally started to catch up and include it on theirs. Casio is still ignoring that feature, and it's a shame because it's a big feature. All three keyboards have USB Type-A ports for connecting a flash drive, mostly used for transferring data, or on the Go Keys keyboards, remember you can record audio songs directly to a flash drive if you have one connected. The Go Keys 3 has one port, the CT-S500 has one port. The Go Keys 5 actually adds a second port. The reason they did that is that if you are somebody who wants to download external styles or sounds and add them to your Roland Go Keys keyboard from the Roland Cloud, you can buy a USB transmitter that you connect to your flash drive port that allows you to connect to the Roland Cloud directly instead of using a computer and then moving the files from your computer to your keyboard. So if you were wanting to buy that and use it with the Go Keys 5, you can leave it connected to one port and have your flash drive for audio songs connected to the other port. On the Go Keys 3, you'd have to switch them back and forth as you needed them. All three keyboards offer Bluetooth audio and Bluetooth MIDI, so you can stream in external audio from a device, which is super handy. And the Bluetooth MIDI, to be quite honest, there's actually a little bit less lag with the Casiotone CT-S500 than there is on the Go Keys. But Bluetooth MIDI is something I personally wouldn't be likely to use anyways, just because of lag issues. And also, just FYI, to enable the Bluetooth on the CT-S500, you do need a external device, the wireless Bluetooth transmitter. However, that is included with the CT-S500, so you connect that to your flash drive port. All three of these keyboards have sustain pedal ports, and only the Go Keys 5 and the CT-S500 offer a second port most likely to be used for an expression pedal. And as I mentioned at the start of this video, the Go Keys 5 is the only keyboard here that has a mic input with separate gain and effects. So just to briefly revisit the most important connectivity differences I touched on at the outset, if you want to use a mic connected to your keyboard, the Go Keys 5 is your only option. And if you intend to perform with your keyboard, you should rule out the Go Keys 3 because it doesn't have those left and right line outs or a second pedal port. Okay, portability. For portability, all three of these keyboards are super portable. They all weigh a featherweight 10 pounds. They're all really compact, especially the Casiotone CT-S500. The Go Keys are 37.5 inches wide by 11.5 inches deep and super thin at only 3.5 inches. And the CT-S500 is even a little bit more compact at 36 inches wide by 10 inches deep, also only 3.5 inches thick. All of these keyboards will run on AA batteries. The CT-S500 requires 6, and both Go Keys models require 8. So they're all super portable options. Okay, so the verdict. What's my verdict on these keyboards? Well, this is kind of a tough one because there are a lot of it depends going on with this comparison, especially given the prices versus the features. The Go Keys 3 and 5 both have a lot more general features than the CT-S500, things like the chord sequencer, more registrations that you can name, a better user interface, and true full-size keys. So with the Go Keys 3 and CT-S500 selling for about the same, it seems the Go Keys 3 is the clear winner. But if you're wanting to perform with your keyboard, you really do need those left and right line outs, so that rules out the Go Keys 3. So now you're looking at a $120 US price difference when comparing the CT-S500 and the Go Keys 5. So at that point, then you have to decide, is that mic input and extra feature set worth that extra $120 US to you or not? But what's my verdict? I think the Go Keys 5 is totally worth the extra $120 US over the CT-S500, even though I slightly prefer the key action on the CT-S500 and definitely prefer its more traditional rhythm styles. The mic input and chord sequencer are awesome features that are just too big to ignore. And the Go Keys does have a better user interface. Now that being said, if my budget for a keyboard maxed out at $400 US, which meant it was between the Go Keys 3 and the CT-S500, for me at least, the left and right line outs on the CT-S500 would make the Casiotone the easy choice in that scenario. So that's pretty much it for this shootout video. I hope you found this information useful. If so, please feel free to smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. That does really help me out. I've left links in the description below to my full in-depth reviews on the Go Keys and the Casiotone CT-S500, as well as links to check out current prices in your area on these keyboards, as well as, always, links to some online piano training that worked really well for me that I can highly recommend. So thanks again for stopping by. Happy keyboard shopping and have an awesome day.